I trusted him with his ex-wife because they had a son. Then he came home cleaner than he left. Don't start, he said. Then I found the photo. That was the moment I stopped pretending I was just being insecure. Before that night, I had spent years trying to be the reasonable wife. The calm wife. The woman who understood that marrying a divorced man with a child meant accepting complicated things. I knew Daniel had a past before me. I knew Olivia would always be connected to him because of their son, Nathan. I told myself that was normal. I told myself mature people handled things without drama. But there is a difference between co-parenting and keeping a door half open. I learned that too late. When Daniel told me Olivia was only in his life because of Nathan, I believed him. She's Nathan's mother, he would say. That's it. Trust me, Amy, if we didn't have a kid involved, I would never talk to her again. I hated that sentence later because of how perfect it was. It made him sound trapped, responsible, even noble. It made me feel guilty for questioning anything. Olivia was never openly cruel to me. That would have been easier. If she had screamed at me or insulted me, I could have defended myself. But she was polite in a way that made me feel small. At Nathan's basketball games, she would smile and say, "Oh, Amy, that sweater is cute." I almost bought one like that years ago. When Daniel reached for coffee, she would say, "Still black, right?" before I could even ask him. When he looked tired, she would tilt her head and say, "You always get quiet when you're stressed." It was never enough to call her out. It was just enough to remind me that she had known him first. I told myself that was history. You cannot erase 12 years of marriage. You cannot erase a child. You cannot erase old habits. I repeated that to myself so many times that it started to sound like wisdom instead of denial. Nathan was 14 when everything happened. He was quiet, tall, and always wore hoodies even when it was warm outside. I cared about him carefully. I never pushed him to treat me like a second mother. I never asked him to call me anything but Amy. When he came over, I made sure we had the food he liked. If he wanted to talk, I listened. If he wanted silence, I gave him silence. Sometimes he compared me to Olivia without meaning to hurt me. My mom doesn't put onions in it. My mom lets me stay up later. My mom knows which detergent doesn't make my skin itchy. I would smile and adjust. I told myself he was a kid. None of it was his fault. That was the part everyone used against me later. The fact that I cared about Nathan became the reason I was expected to stay quiet. The boundary issues started small. Olivia would text Daniel because Nathan forgot a hoodie at our house. Then, because Nathan needed help with a school project. Then, because Nathan had a dentist appointment and she wanted Daniel to remind him. Those things made sense. Then the messages started coming later. Olivia needed Daniel to check a noise in her garage. Olivia needed help moving a box from her car. Olivia was overwhelmed because Nathan was being difficult, and she said Daniel was the only one who could calm him down. Olivia's kitchen sink was leaking, even though Daniel was an engineer, not a plumber. Olivia's Wi-Fi was acting up, even though she could have called the internet company like a normal person. Every time I questioned it, Daniel had the same answer. "It's for Nathan." Those 3 words shut me up more times than I want to admit. One Thursday evening, we were eating dinner when Daniel's phone lit up beside his plate. He glanced at it, turned the screen down, and kept eating. That small movement made my stomach tighten. I asked, "Is that Olivia?" He sighed like I had ruined the mood. "Yes. Nathan forgot about a history assignment. She's asking if I can help him this weekend." "Okay," I said. "But why did you turn the phone over like that?" He looked at me with this tired, disappointed expression. "I didn't turn it over like anything. I just put my phone down." I wanted to say more, but Nathan was coming over the next day, and I did not want to start a fight. So I nodded and pretended I believed him. That became the pattern. I noticed something. He explained it away. I felt guilty. Then I stayed quiet. A few weeks later, we went to Nathan's basketball game at Madison Central High School. The gym was loud, hot, and smelled like popcorn and floor polish. I sat beside Daniel on the bleachers while Olivia sat 2 rows below with her boyfriend, Brian Hall. Brian was a mechanic at Hall Auto Repair. I had only met him a few times, but he seemed quiet and decent. He did not try too hard with Nathan. He just showed up, watched the game, and clapped when everyone else clapped. Olivia spent most of the game looking over her shoulder at Daniel. Not at me. Not really at Nathan. At Daniel. During halftime, she came up to us holding 2 coffees. She handed one to Daniel and said, "Black, no sugar." "I figured you'd forget to get one." Daniel laughed softly and took it. I stared at the cup in his hand like it was something disgusting. He noticed my face and said, "What?" I said, "Nothing." Olivia smiled at me and said, "I hope that's okay." Old habit. Old habit. Those words sat inside me for the rest of the game. On the drive home, I finally said, "It bothers me when she does that." Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "Does what?" "Acts like she still knows you better than I do." He exhaled through his nose. "Amy, she was just being nice. She brought you coffee." So So her boyfriend was sitting right there. Why is she bringing you coffee? He gripped the steering wheel tighter. Because we are adults and we can be civil for Nathan. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You always say Nathan's name when you want me to stop talking. He looked at me then, quick and sharp. That's not fair. No, I said quietly. I don't think any of this is fair. We did not speak for the rest of the drive. That night, he slept turned away from me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was becoming the kind of woman I never wanted to be. Jealous. Suspicious. Bitter. The new wife who could not handle the ex-wife existing. The next morning, Daniel acted normal. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work. He told me he loved me. He texted me during lunch and asked if I wanted takeout for dinner. And, because I wanted peace more than I wanted answers, I accepted it. For a while, things calmed down. Or maybe I forced myself to stop watching. Nathan came over every other weekend. He and Daniel watched games in the living room. I worked late some nights at Lakeview Dental Office because Rachel James, the dentist who owned the clinic, was changing software systems and the billing reports were a mess. Daniel and I still had normal married moments. We grocery shopped. We argued about laundry. We sat on the couch with our legs touching. That is what makes betrayal so confusing. It does not always look like a movie. Sometimes your husband is cheating while also asking if you need anything from the store. Then Olivia started calling instead of texting. The first time, Daniel stepped outside to answer. He said it was because the reception was bad in the kitchen. The second time, he answered in the garage. The third time, he let it ring, looked at me, and said, "I'll call her back later." I said, "You can answer." He said, "No, it's fine." But his knee bounced under the table for the next 10 minutes. I noticed. I hated that I noticed. One Saturday morning, Olivia called while Daniel was making pancakes. Nathan was still asleep in the guest room. Daniel looked at the phone, then at me. I said, "Go ahead." He answered on speaker, probably to prove something. Olivia's voice came through soft and shaky. "Sorry, I know it's early. Nathan left his science folder here, and he's going to need it." Daniel frowned. "He's here. Why didn't he bring it?" "I don't know," she said. "He's been so scattered lately. I'm worried about him." Daniel glanced toward the hallway. "I can pick it up later." "No, it's fine," Olivia said. "I can drop it off." There was a pause. Then she added, "Unless Amy has a problem with that." I felt my face go hot. Daniel quickly said, "Nobody has a problem. Just drop it off." When he hung up, I said, "Why would she say that?" He shrugged. "Because she knows you're tense around her." "I'm tense because she says things like that." He rubbed his forehead. "Can we not do this before breakfast?" Again, I swallowed it. Olivia came by 20 minutes later wearing leggings, a soft gray sweatshirt, and no makeup, like she had rolled out of bed looking casual and perfect. She handed Daniel the folder at the door, then looked past him at me. "Morning, Amy," she said. "Hope I'm not intruding." "You were at my front door at 8 in the morning," I said. "But it's fine." Daniel turned his head toward me shocked. Olivia's smile barely moved. "I'm just trying to help my son." There it was again. My son. Her son. The line she could draw any time she wanted. Nathan came out of the hallway, hair messy, hoodie wrinkled. "Mom?" Olivia's whole face changed. "Hey, baby. You forgot this." He looked embarrassed. "You could have just left it in the mailbox." She laughed lightly. "I wanted to see you." It should have been sweet. Maybe it was sweet. But I could feel the performance in it. I could feel how she wanted Daniel to see her as the devoted mother and me as the irritated outsider. After she left, Nathan ate pancakes in silence. Daniel barely looked at me. I stood at the sink rinsing plates, feeling like I had somehow become the villain in my own kitchen. Later that day, Daniel told me I owed Olivia an apology. I turned around slowly. For what? For making her feel unwelcome. She is your ex-wife. She should feel a little unwelcome when she shows up at our house uninvited. She came for Nathan. She came because she wanted to make a point. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You're reading into everything." "No," I said. "I think I've been reading the room correctly for a long time, and you just don't like that." He left the room. That was the first time I felt something shift between us. Not break completely, but shift. Like a picture frame hanging crooked after someone slams a door. For the next few weeks, Daniel became extra careful. He left his phone face up. He mentioned Olivia's texts before I asked. He made a big show of saying things like, "Olivia asked about Nathan's practice schedule, just so you know." It should have reassured me. It did not. Because it felt rehearsed. One night, while we were folding laundry, I asked him directly, "Do you miss being married to her?" He stared at me like I had slapped him. "No. Do you miss your old family?" He looked down at the towel in his hands. "Sometimes I miss when things were easier for Nathan." That answer was honest. I could tell. And, because it was honest, it hurt differently. I asked, "And where do I fit into that?" He walked over, put his hands on my shoulders, and said, "Amy, you are my wife. I chose you. I wanted to believe him so badly. So I did. The Friday everything changed started like a normal day. I went to work early because Rachel needed payroll finalized. Daniel texted me around noon asking if we still had chicken in the freezer. I replied that we did. He sent back a thumbs up and a heart. It was stupid how much that little heart meant to me at the time. When I got home, Daniel was already there, still in his work shirt, standing in the kitchen with his phone in his hand. He looked distracted. I asked, everything okay? He said, Olivia called. Nathan's upset. My stomach dropped before I even knew why. About what? He got into it with her about school. She says he won't talk to her. Is he okay? I think so. But she asked if I could come by and talk to him in person. I looked at the clock. It was almost 7. I said, can't you call him? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. He's not answering. Then maybe give him space. He's my son, Amy. The words were not loud, but they landed hard. I stood there for a second, watching him. Do you want me to come with you? He answered too fast. No. Then he caught himself and added, I think it might be better if it's just me. Father-son thing. Father-son thing. That phrase made it impossible to argue without sounding cruel. So I said, okay. He came over and kissed my cheek. I won't be long. I watched him leave through the front window. I remember the red glow of his taillights pulling out of the driveway. I remember telling myself not to be dramatic. I remember washing the same glass twice because my hands did not know what else to do. At 8:23, I texted him. Is Nathan okay? No reply. At 9:04, I texted again. Please update me when you can. No reply. At 9:47, I called. It rang until voicemail. At 10:31, I called again. No answer. By then, the house felt too quiet. Every small noise made me look toward the door. I sat on the couch with the TV on, but I could not tell you what was playing. My phone was in my hand so long it got warm. At 11:18, he finally texted. Sorry. Long talk. Heading home soon. I stared at those words. Long talk. 2 words that should have made me feel better, but instead made something in my chest tighten. He came home after midnight. I was standing in the hallway barefoot, holding a glass of water I had not taken a sip from. When he opened the door, he looked startled to see me awake. His hair was damp. Not soaked. Not dripping. Just damp enough that I noticed. His shirt was different. And he smelled like soap that did not belong in our bathroom. Not cologne. Not sweat. Soap. Clean, soft, unfamiliar soap. He closed the door quietly and said, You're still up. I looked at him. Did you shower there? His face changed for half a second. That half second told me more than any confession could have. Then he said, Don't start. Not, what are you talking about? Not, no. Not even, that's ridiculous. Just, don't start. I felt my whole body go cold. I asked again, Did you shower at Olivia's house? He looked exhausted, annoyed, and guilty all at once. Nathan spilled soda on me. It was such a stupid lie. Not even a good one. Not even one that respected my intelligence. I looked at his shirt. That's not the shirt you left in. He glanced down like he had forgotten that part. Then he said, Olivia had one of my old shirts from storage. Can we please not do this tonight? Old shirt. Storage. Soda. Long talk. Father-son thing. The lies were stacking so fast they barely fit in the hallway. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the glass. I wanted to grab his phone out of his hand and demand the truth right there. But I didn't. I just said, Where was Nathan? Daniel's eyes flicked away. Barely. But enough. He said, in his room. I nodded slowly. In his room while you showered? Daniel's jaw tightened. Amy, I'm tired. I said, So am I. He walked past me and went upstairs. I stood in the hallway for a long time after that, still holding the glass. That night, Daniel slept beside me like nothing had happened. I stayed awake until the room started turning gray. I listened to his breathing. I looked at the outline of his phone on the nightstand. I told myself not to touch it. Then I touched it. I know people will judge me for that. Maybe I deserved it. But I was not snooping for fun. I was not looking for drama. I was trying to prove I was not losing my mind. His messages with Olivia were almost empty. Not normal empty. Cleaned empty. There were a few messages about Nathan's schedule, a school email, a practice time. But nothing from that night. Nothing about Nathan being upset. Nothing about Olivia asking him to come over. Nothing about the emergency that supposedly pulled my husband out of our house for 5 hours. Deleted messages are still messages. They just scream louder. My hands were shaking as I checked his photos. Nothing. I checked recently deleted. There it was. One photo. Not explicit. Not dramatic. Not enough for anyone else to understand why I stopped breathing. It was a picture taken in Olivia's kitchen. A wine glass sat on the counter. Beside it was Daniel's watch. The watch I gave him on our first anniversary. He never took that watch off unless he was showering or sleeping. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. Because suddenly the damp hair made sense. The changed shirt made sense. The 5 hours made sense. The way he said don't start made sense. And the worst part was not even that he had been at Olivia's house. The worst part was realizing Nathan had probably never needed him at all. I did not wake Daniel up right away. I wanted to. I wanted to shake him so hard that the truth fell out before he had time to dress it up as an accident. But I knew him. I knew if I came at him while I was shaking, crying, furious, he would focus on my reaction instead of what he did. He would make my voice the problem. My anger. My snooping. My tone. So I sat on the edge of the bed with his phone in my hand and stared at the photo until it felt burned into my brain. Olivia's kitchen counter. 1 wine glass. Daniel's watch beside it. There were no bodies in the photo. No kiss. No proof that would make people gasp if I posted it online. But I knew that watch. I knew Daniel. I knew his habits. He never took it off unless he was in the shower, asleep, or doing something he did not want to explain. And he had come home freshly showered. I put the phone back exactly where it had been, then went downstairs because I could not breathe in the same room as him. The kitchen was dark except for the little microwave clock glowing over the stove. I stood there barefoot in my own house, feeling like a stranger. The same house where I had cooked dinners for Nathan. The same kitchen where Daniel had kissed my shoulder while I paid bills. The same place where I had slowly convinced myself we were building something stable. And all I could think was, how many times did I confuse routine for loyalty? By morning, Daniel came downstairs like nothing had happened. He was wearing sweatpants and an old North Star Engineering Group shirt. His hair was dry now. He walked into the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and said, "Coffee." I looked at him from the table. He paused. "What?" he asked. That one word almost made me laugh. Not because anything was funny, but because there he was, standing in front of me like I had just woken up in a bad mood. Like he had not come home after midnight smelling like another woman's shower. Like his watch had not been sitting beside a wine glass in his ex-wife's kitchen. I said, "Where was Nathan last night?" Daniel's hand stayed on the coffee mug. He did not turn around. "At Olivia's," he said. "In his room." He finally looked at me. "Yes. Did you talk to him?" His face tightened. "Amy, it's too early for this." "No. It's actually very late for this." He placed the mug on the counter slowly. "What is that supposed to mean?" I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my voice was calm in a way that scared even me. "It means I know you lied." He blinked once. "About what?" "About Nathan. About the soda. About the shower. About everything." Daniel rubbed his face. "I didn't lie." I nodded like I was listening. "So Nathan spilled soda on you?" "Yes." "And Olivia happened to have an old shirt of yours ready?" "It was in a box." "I told you that." "And after Nathan spilled soda on you, you showered in your ex-wife's bathroom, changed into an old shirt, stayed there for 5 hours, deleted your messages, and came home after midnight smelling like her soap." His mouth opened, then closed. There it was. The silence. I pulled out my phone and held up the photo. I had taken a picture of the picture because I knew he might delete it again. "Then why was your watch on our kitchen counter beside a glass of wine?" Daniel's face went pale. Not shocked. Not confused. Pale. Like a person who had been caught and knew the lie was already dead. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. The world kept going in this insulting, ordinary way while my marriage stood there bleeding out between us. He whispered, "You went through my phone." And I actually smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that happens when someone confirms exactly who they are. "That's what you're choosing?" I asked. "That's the first thing you want to say?" He looked down. "I'm not choosing anything. You invaded my privacy. And you used your son as an alibi." His eyes snapped back up. I watched the words hit him because that was the part he could not smooth over. Cheating was awful. Lying was awful. But using Nathan made it dirtier. It made it cowardly. He sat down like his legs could not hold him anymore. I stayed standing. I said, "Tell me the truth." He covered his face with both hands. For a second, I thought he was going to keep lying. I could almost see the calculations moving behind his eyes. How much did I know? What could he still deny? Could he make this about me snooping? Could he say the wine glass was old? Could he say he removed the watch because it got wet? Then his shoulders dropped. "It happened once," he said. I felt the floor disappear under me even though I already knew. I hated that. I hated that a confession could still hurt when the answer was already sitting in your chest. He said it again, like repetition would make it smaller. "It happened once." I stared at him. "What happened once?" He looked sick. "Amy." "No. Say it." He rubbed his palms against his knees. "I slept with Olivia." There are sentences that split your life into before and after. That was mine. I did not scream. I did not collapse. I did not slap him. I just stood there, gripping the back of the chair so tightly my fingers hurt. He started talking fast. "It wasn't planned. I swear to God, it wasn't planned." She called me because Nathan was upset, and when I got there, he wasn't really talking. He was in his room. Olivia and I started arguing about him, and then we talked about old stuff. She was crying. I was trying to calm her down. It got emotional. It just happened. I said, "Stop saying that." "What?" "Stop saying it just happened. You are not a chair that fell over." He flinched. Good. He deserved to flinch. I asked, "Did Nathan actually ask for you?" Daniel looked away. That told me everything before he answered. Olivia said he needed me. Did you see him? He was home. That is not what I asked. Daniel swallowed. I saw him for a minute. For a minute. He was upset. Was he upset before you got there or after he realized you and his mother were acting weird? Daniel's face twisted. Don't bring him into this. I almost lost it then. I laughed, but it came out sharp and ugly. Don't bring him into this? You brought him into this. You put his name on your lie and drove to her house. He covered his face again. I know. No, I don't think you do. I know I messed up. Messed up is forgetting milk. Messed up is missing a bill. You slept with your ex-wife and came home to me showered. His eyes filled with tears. And I hated him for crying. Not because men cannot cry. Not because remorse is bad. But because his tears felt like another thing I was supposed to take care of. Another mess I was expected to soften. Another emotion of his that somehow mattered more than mine. He said, "I love you." I said, "Don't." "I do." "You loved me before or after you washed her off you?" His face crumpled. I know that was cruel. I know. But I am not going to rewrite myself into some perfect victim. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted one sentence to land somewhere near the place he had stabbed me. He whispered. I felt disgusting. Good. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he had never heard me sound that cold before. I came home because I knew it was wrong, he said. You came home because you live here. He shook his head. No, Amy. I came home because I wanted you. I stared at him, and something in me cracked so quietly I almost missed it. You wanted me after. He did not answer. That answer hurt worse than the confession. For the rest of that morning, Daniel followed me from room to room like a man trying to hold smoke in his hands. I went upstairs. He followed. I opened the closet. He stood in the doorway. I pulled out a duffel bag. He started crying harder. Please don't leave, he said. I said, move. Amy, please. Let's talk. I am not packing for a vacation. I'll do anything. I laughed again, quiet and dead. You already did. He said he would cut off Olivia except through a parenting app. He said he would give me every password. He said he would go to counseling. He said he would sleep on the floor if I wanted. He said he would tell his parents. He said he would tell Nathan someday when it was appropriate. He said he would never forgive himself. I kept putting clothes into the bag. Then my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. I stared at her name because I did not even know she had my number saved anymore. We had communicated before about school pickups or Nathan's allergies, but never like friends. Never casually. Her message said, I'm sorry you had to find out like this. I never meant to hurt you. I read it 3 times. Then I looked at Daniel. Did you tell her I know? His face changed again. She texted you? I turned the screen toward him. He reached for the phone, but I stepped back. No, I said. You don't get to manage this. I typed before I could talk myself out of it. Did you mean to sleep with my husband though? Daniel said, Amy, don't. I looked up at him. Don't what? Reply to the woman who just apologized for accidentally sleeping with you. He shut his mouth. Olivia did not answer right away. 20 minutes passed. During those 20 minutes, Daniel paced the kitchen, saying we needed to be careful, saying emotions were high, saying this could hurt Nathan. Nathan. Again. I was starting to hate how his name sounded in Daniel's mouth. Finally, Olivia replied. He is not just your husband. He was my family first. I stared at those words. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I made a mistake. Not, I'll respect your space. He was my family first. Something hot and ugly rose in me. I wrote back, then maybe you should have kept him the first time. Daniel saw it over my shoulder and said, that was unnecessary. I turned around slowly. Unnecessary? I asked. He looked exhausted. I'm just saying this is already bad. No, Daniel. What was unnecessary was showering at your ex-wife's townhouse while I sat here texting you about your son. He flinched again. I was glad. For the next 2 days, I stayed at Emily Brooks' apartment in downtown Madison. Emily had been my best friend for years, and she was a writer, which meant she had this annoying habit of seeing the story under the story before I was ready to admit it. She opened her door, looked at my face, and did not ask stupid questions. She just said, come in. I slept on her couch the first night. Or tried to. Mostly I lay there staring at the ceiling while she sat nearby with a blanket around her shoulders, letting me talk in broken pieces. I told her about the late-night text. The damp hair. The soap. The watch. The photo. The confession. Olivia's message. When I told her Olivia wrote, "He was my family first," Emily closed her eyes and said, "That woman wanted you to know." I said, "Maybe she was just emotional." Emily opened her eyes. "Amy." That was all she said. And I knew she was right. Olivia did not accidentally text me. She did not accidentally choose those words. She wanted to remind me that she had history, a child, a last name, and a claim that existed before me. The worst part was that some people agreed with her. By Sunday, Daniel's mother, Patricia King, called me. I almost did not answer. Patricia was a librarian, soft-spoken, careful with words, the kind of woman who made every insult sound like concern. But I answered because I wanted to know which version Daniel had told. She sighed into the phone like she was already tired of my pain. "Amy, sweetheart, I know you're hurt." I said nothing. She continued, "Daniel told us there was a mistake." A mistake. There it was. A mistake, like he used the wrong fork at dinner. I said, "Did he tell you what the mistake was?" There was a pause. He said he and Olivia crossed a line. I laughed once. That is a very clean way to say it. "Amy, I am not excusing him." Then don't. I'm not. But Nathan has already been through one divorce. We have to think about him too. I closed my eyes. Of course. There it was again. Nathan had become a room everyone shoved me into whenever I got too close to the truth. I said, "Patricia, I do think about Nathan." I thought about him every time Olivia crossed a boundary and I stayed quiet. I thought about him every time Daniel left to fix something at her house. I thought about him when I didn't make scenes at games, when I smiled through awkward dinners, when I let people act like being hurt made me immature. She was quiet. I kept going. But Daniel did not think about Nathan when he used him as an excuse to go sleep with Olivia. Patricia's voice got small. "Marriage is complicated." I said no. Parenting after divorce is complicated. Sharing holidays is complicated. Sleeping with your ex-wife is actually very simple. You either do it or you don't. She started crying. I hung up. I did not feel powerful. I felt sick. But I also felt something I had not felt in a long time. Clear. When I came back to the house on Monday, Daniel had cleaned everything. That made me angry in a way I cannot fully explain. The dishes were done. Laundry folded. Trash taken out. Our bed made. He had even bought the lavender detergent I liked, as if the smell of clean towels could cover up what happened. He was standing in the kitchen when I walked in. "I started counseling," he said immediately. I looked at him. He continued, "I made an appointment at Capital Family Counseling Center. For me first. And for us if you'll come. I'll do the parenting app." I already downloaded it. I told Olivia all communication has to go through there unless it's an emergency. "I'll give you my passwords. I'll do anything." I placed my bag by the door. "Did you tell Olivia that?" "Yes." "And what did she say?" His jaw tightened. "She said I was overreacting." Of course she did. I walked past him and went upstairs. The guest room had fresh sheets. His pillow was on the bed. That small detail almost broke me. Not because he moved rooms. Because he knew to. For the next 2 weeks, we lived like ghosts inside the same house. Daniel slept in the guest room. He made coffee every morning and left it on the counter. He wrote apology notes on sticky pads and left them near my laptop. One said, "I will spend the rest of my life proving this was not who I am." Another said, "You deserved better than my worst moment." I hated the notes. I kept every single one. That is the kind of messy person I was then. I hated him. I missed him. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to hold me. I wanted the truth. I wanted to go back to before I knew it. I wanted to burn the whole house down and fold his shirts at the same time. We went to one counseling session together. The counselor asked Daniel why he went to Olivia's that night. Daniel said, "Because I thought Nathan needed me." The counselor asked, "And when you realized the situation was not what you thought?" Daniel stared at his hands. I stayed. That was the first fully honest thing he said. I looked at him then. Really looked at him. He did not blame Olivia. He did not say it just happened. He did not mention wine, history, stress, Nathan, or emotions. He said I stayed. I should have felt relieved that he finally admitted his choice. Instead, I felt my last excuse for him die. Because if he stayed, then he chose. After counseling, we sat in the car without starting the engine. Daniel said, "I know I don't deserve another chance." I said, "Then why are you asking for one?" His eyes filled again. "Because I love you." I looked out the windshield at the gray Madison sky. "I think you love being forgiven." He did not answer. Meanwhile, Olivia changed tactics. She stopped messaging me directly, but she started posting constantly. Not obvious posts. Not anything I could point to without sounding unhinged. But little quotes about lifelong bonds. About people who misunderstand co-parenting. About jealous hearts. About how some connections never really end. Tina Morgan, her cashier friend, commented hearts under everything. One post said, "A real family will always find its way back." Another said, some people enter a story late and think they can rewrite the first chapters. I stared at that one for a long time. Then I screenshotted it. I screenshotted everything. Not because I had a plan at first. I just needed proof that I was not imagining the cruelty. Proof that she was not some helpless ex-wife who got swept into one emotional mistake. Proof that she was enjoying this. Daniel told me to stop looking. I said, tell her to stop posting. He said, I can't control her. I said, funny. Everyone seems very comfortable trying to control me. That shut him up. The final straw came at Nathan's next basketball game. I did not want to go. I really did not. But Nathan had texted Daniel asking if we were coming, and I refused to punish the kid for adult garbage. So I went. Madison Central High School gym was packed and loud. I sat beside Daniel, but there was a space between us that felt bigger than the bleachers. Olivia sat across the aisle with Brian. She looked perfect, of course. Hair curled. Soft sweater. Calm face. Brian gave me a polite nod. I nodded back and felt guilt twist in my stomach. Because he did not know. He sat beside a woman who had slept with her ex-husband and then posted quotes about family while he clapped for her son. During halftime, Olivia walked past us. She paused just long enough to touch Daniel's shoulder. Can we talk after the game about Nathan's schedule? She asked. Daniel stiffened. I watched Brian glance over. Daniel said, use the app. Olivia's smile tightened. It's easier in person. I said, a lot of things seem easier in person for you. Her eyes moved to me. For 1 second, her mask slipped. Then she smiled again and said, this is about my son, Amy. My stepson, I said. That surprised her. Honestly, it surprised me too. I had never called Nathan that in front of her. I was always careful. Always respectful. Always shrinking myself so Olivia would not feel challenged. But in that moment, I was done pretending I had no place in the family I had cooked for, cleaned for, worried over, and protected. Olivia leaned closer and said quietly, careful. You're not his mother. I said, just as quietly, and you're not Daniel's wife. Her face went still. Daniel whispered, Amy. I stood up and walked out before I said something worse. In the hallway outside the gym, I leaned against the wall and tried to breathe. Kids were laughing near the vending machines. Someone dropped coins. A teacher walked past carrying a clipboard. Life kept being normal around me, and I hated it. A minute later, Brian came out. He stopped a few feet away from me. Are you okay? He asked. That question almost broke me because it was so simple. Nobody had asked me that without an agenda in weeks. I looked at him. Quiet, decent Brian Hall, who fixed cars for a living and showed up to basketball games with no idea he was sitting in the middle of someone else's lie. I almost told him right there. But then Nathan's team came running back onto the court, and the crowd roared, and I saw Olivia through the gym doors watching us. Watching me. Watching Brian. Like she knew. Like she was daring me. So I swallowed the truth one more time. I'm fine, I told him. But I was not fine. And by the time I went home that night, I knew something with absolute certainty. Olivia had dragged me into her game. Daniel had handed her the pieces. And if everyone expected me to keep protecting their peace, then they had seriously misunderstood the woman they had been humiliating. I did not send the screenshots to Brian that night. I wish I could say that was because I was being mature or because I was thinking clearly, but honestly, I just wanted to be sure. Not sure that Daniel and Olivia had betrayed me. I already knew that. I wanted to be sure I was ready to become the kind of woman who stopped protecting people who would never protect me. That sounds dramatic, but that was what it felt like. For weeks, I had been swallowing everyone else's comfort. Daniel's comfort. Olivia's image. Patricia's family peace. Even Brian's ignorance, because part of me wondered if maybe it was kinder to let him keep whatever version of Olivia he thought he had. But then I thought about him standing in the hallway at Madison Central High School, looking genuinely concerned, asking if I was okay. And I thought about Olivia sitting in that gym, smiling like she still owned every corner of Daniel's life. The next morning, I woke up before Daniel. He was still sleeping in the guest room. The house was quiet, that heavy kind of quiet that comes after weeks of fighting, crying, and pretending not to hear each other through thin walls. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened the folder I had made. I had named it Records because calling it Proof My Life Fell Apart felt too pathetic. Inside were screenshots of Olivia's text to me. The one where she said she never meant to hurt me. The one where she said Daniel was her family first. Screenshots of her posts about lifelong bonds. Screenshots of her comments with Tina Morgan, all hearts and little vague jokes. The photo from Daniel's phone, with his watch on Olivia's kitchen counter beside the wine glass. A short timeline I had typed for myself because I was terrified that one day someone would convince me I had imagined the order of things. At 7:42 in the morning, I opened a message to Brian Hall. I stared at the blank box for almost 10 minutes. Then I typed, Brian, I'm sorry to send this, but I believe you deserve to know. Daniel admitted he slept with Olivia the night he went to her townhouse and told me Nathan needed him. Olivia later texted me directly. I'm sending screenshots because I would want someone to tell me if our places were reversed. I'm sorry. I attached everything. Then I sat there, hand hovering over the send button. My heart was beating so hard it felt stupid. Like I was committing a crime instead of telling the truth. Then I heard Daniel moving upstairs. And for some reason, that made me press send. I closed the laptop immediately like the message could jump back out if I stopped looking at it. Daniel came downstairs 10 minutes later, hair messy, face tired. He looked at the coffee pot, then at me. You're up early, he said. I looked at him and realized there was nothing left in me that wanted to perform normal. I sent everything to Brian, I said. He went still. What? I sent him the screenshots. Your confession. Olivia's messages. Her posts. The photo. His face changed so fast it almost would have been funny if it had not been so sad. Fear first. Then anger. Then panic. Amy, why would you do that? I stood up slowly. Because he deserved to know. You had no right. That made me laugh. I mean, really laugh. Not loud, not happy, but enough that Daniel looked at me like I had finally become someone he did not recognize. I had no right? I asked. You slept with Olivia while she had a boyfriend, while you had a wife, and while you used your son as an excuse. But I had no right to tell the one other person being lied to. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. You're making this uglier. No, I said. I am refusing to keep it pretty. He stepped closer. This affects Nathan. Everything you did affected Nathan. You just wanted me to absorb the damage quietly so nobody else had to see it. His mouth opened, but no words came out. For once. Around noon, Brian replied. Thank you. I suspected something. I'm sorry he did this to you too. That was it. No explosion. No threats. No dramatic speech. Just a decent man confirming he had been standing in the same fog I had been standing in. And somehow, that hurt worse. Because it meant Olivia had not just had one reckless night. It meant there were signs. Patterns. Little humiliations Brian had probably swallowed too. Maybe he had also been told not to overreact. Maybe he had also been made to feel jealous or insecure or unreasonable. 2 days later, Olivia called Daniel screaming. I was in the kitchen when his phone lit up. Her name appeared on the screen, and for 1 second, neither of us moved. Then he answered. I could hear her voice even though it was not on speaker. She was furious. Not sorry. Not embarrassed. Furious. I heard my name more than once. Bitter. Jealous. Pathetic. Crazy. She said I ruined her relationship. She said Brian moved out. She said I had no idea what history meant. She said Daniel needed to control his wife. His wife. Funny how I was his wife when she needed someone to blame. Daniel walked into the hallway, but her voice followed him through the house. I stood at the sink, washing a mug that was already clean, listening to the woman who helped destroy my marriage accuse me of being destructive. When he came back, his face was tight. She says Brian left. I nodded. Good for Brian. Daniel stared at me. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean that. He didn't deserve to be dragged into this. He was already in it. He just didn't know. Daniel's voice sharpened. You wanted revenge. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said yes. He blinked. I continued, and I wanted justice. And I wanted the truth out. And I wanted to stop being the only person in pain. I don't know which one was bigger. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was some saint. That was the first honest thing I had said about myself in weeks. Daniel looked almost disappointed, like he preferred me wounded but morally perfect. That was when I knew there was no fixing us. Not because he cheated. Not only because of that. Some people survive cheating. I know that. I am not judging anyone who stays and rebuilds. But for me, the affair was the crack. Everything after showed me the foundation was rotten. He had lied, deleted messages, used Nathan as a cover, let Olivia message me like she had some claim, let his mother pressure me, then acted shocked when I refused to be quiet. He did not just want forgiveness. He wanted forgiveness without consequence. That afternoon, I called a family law office during my lunch break at Lakeview Dental Office. I sat in my car behind the building, holding a notepad against the steering wheel, writing down words I never thought I would need. Separation. Lease. Shared accounts. Documentation. Personal property. My hands shook the whole time. Rachel James, the dentist who owned the clinic, saw me when I came back inside. She did not pry. She just looked at my face and said, "Take the afternoon if you need it." I almost cried from that small kindness. Instead, I said, "I think I do." When I got home, Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table. His laptop was open, but he was not working. I said, "I talked to a legal office." He closed his eyes. "Amy, I'm not filing today," I said. "But I'm done pretending this is just a rough patch." He whispered, "Please don't do this." I looked around the kitchen. The uneven table leg. The cabinets Daniel had fixed. The calendar with Nathan's school events. The coffee mugs we bought during a weekend trip we once thought was romantic. I said, you already did. For the next month, we separated our lives piece by piece. It was not cinematic. Nobody tells you how ordinary heartbreak can be. You can be crying while deciding who keeps the air fryer. You can hate someone and still know exactly where they keep the extra phone charger. You can sit across from the man who betrayed you and calmly discuss whether the couch should go to his apartment because your new place is smaller. Daniel moved into a small apartment 10 minutes from Madison Central High School, so he could still be close to Nathan. He told me that like it was proof he was becoming better. Maybe it was. I hope it was. I did not want him to become a monster. That was one of the hardest parts. I wanted him hurt, yes. I wanted him to understand what he had done. But I did not want him destroyed. Not really. Because Nathan still needed a father, and because I had loved Daniel once. Maybe part of me still did in a sad, useless way. Olivia stopped posting quotes. Tina Morgan stopped commenting hearts. Brian moved into a small apartment near downtown Madison. I only knew that because he sent one final message a few weeks later. I left. Thank you for telling me. I hope you find peace. I did not reply with a long message. I just wrote, you too. That felt like enough. The hardest conversation was with Nathan. He found out eventually. Not from me. Not directly. But teenagers are not stupid, and adults are never as quiet as they think they are. He heard arguments. He saw Daniel's apartment. He noticed Olivia crying 1 minute and acting normal the next. He connected enough dots to feel confused and angry. One Sunday, he came over because he wanted to see our dog, Daisy. Daisy was technically mine before Daniel, but Nathan loved her like she was part of the custody agreement. I told him he could still come by to see her whenever he wanted, as long as it was okay with his dad. That day, he sat on the couch while Daisy put her head in his lap. He scratched behind her ears and stared at the TV even though it was not on. I made pasta because it was one of the few things he always ate without complaint. He barely touched it. After Daniel stepped outside to take a call, Nathan said, "Are you leaving because of my mom?" I froze with a plate in my hand. There are questions adults should never force children to ask. I sat down across from him. "No," I said carefully. "I'm leaving because of choices your dad made." His jaw tightened. "My mom said you hate us." That sentence hurt more than I expected. I said, "I don't hate you." He did not look at me. I added, "I don't hate your mom every minute either. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But that is not the same as hating you." He swallowed hard. "Did I do something?" That almost broke me. "No," I said immediately. "Nathan, no. None of this is because of you." He looked younger than 14 right then. Not the hoodie-wearing teenager who rolled his eyes at adults. Just a kid sitting in a room full of damage he did not create. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to say your father used your name as an excuse. Your mother crossed lines and then hid behind you. Everyone keeps saying this is for you while hurting you the most. But I did not. Because I meant what I said. He was not responsible for carrying adult ugliness. So I said, sometimes adults make choices, and then other people have to make choices too. But you did not cause this. He wiped his nose with his sleeve and nodded. Then he said quietly, "Can I still see Daisy?" I smiled, even though my throat hurt. Of course. That was the closest I came to forgiving anyone in that whole mess. Not Daniel. Not Olivia. Not myself. Just Nathan, even though he had done nothing wrong. 3 months later, Daniel and I were legally separated. He still sent me long emails sometimes. Accountability emails. Therapy emails. Emails with subject lines like, "I understand more now," and "no pressure to respond." Sometimes I read them. Sometimes I deleted them. Sometimes I opened them just to see if I still felt anything. Usually, I felt tired. Patricia sent me one card. It had a watercolor bird on the front and a message inside that said, "I am sorry for the pressure I put on you." That was all. I kept it. Not because it fixed anything, but because an apology without an excuse is rare, and I was learning not to throw away small decent things just because they arrived late. Olivia never apologized. That used to bother me. Now it almost comforts me. Because if she apologized, I might have wasted energy wondering if she meant it. Her silence was cleaner. Daniel told me later, through one of his emails, that Olivia blamed him after Brian left. She said he ruined her relationship. He said he finally understood how much she liked having power over both of us. I do not know if that is true or just something he wanted me to hear. I do know he no longer goes inside her townhouse. They communicate through the parenting app unless there is a real emergency. Nathan's pickup happens in public places now. School parking lot. Gym entrance. Places with fluorescent lights and witnesses. Maybe that is karma. Not dramatic. Not satisfying in the way people want revenge to be. Nobody lost everything. Nobody got exposed in a viral post. Nobody stood in court while a judge called them terrible. The karma was quieter than that. Daniel lost the comfort of being trusted. Olivia lost 2 men who used to answer when she called. Brian lost a lie. And I lost the version of myself that thought peace meant swallowing disrespect until it tasted normal. I live in a smaller apartment now, still in Madison. Daisy sleeps at the foot of my bed. I still work at Lakeview Dental Office. Rachel still pretends not to notice when I come in with puffy eyes, but less often now. Nathan comes by sometimes. Not every week. Not on a schedule. Just sometimes. He brings homework or a hoodie or some teenage excuse that is really about Daisy. I always let him in. I do not ask questions about his mom. I do not ask about Daniel. I do not make him choose a side. Sometimes he eats pasta at my table and tells me about school. Sometimes we barely talk. That is enough. People tell me I won. I do not know if I believe that. Winning sounds clean. This was not clean. I exposed Olivia to Brian partly because he deserved the truth and partly because I wanted her to feel consequences. I will not lie about that. I wanted her perfect little posts to crack. I wanted Daniel to stop hiding behind fatherhood. I wanted someone else to look at her and say, I know what you did. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe it makes me human. The old me would have protected everyone. I would have stayed quiet for Nathan, for Daniel's reputation, for Olivia's relationship, for Patricia's peace, for the illusion that blended families are only successful when the new wife learns to disappear. The new me believes silence is not always kindness. Sometimes silence is just the room where liars get comfortable. I do not know if what I did was justice or revenge. I think it was both. I think people like to separate those words because it makes them feel better, but when you are the one standing in the wreckage, the line gets blurry. I loved Daniel. I cared about Nathan. I even tried, in my own way, to respect Olivia's place in their lives. But respecting someone's place does not mean handing them yours. So now I am here, in a quiet apartment, with my dog breathing at my feet and a marriage behind me that ended in a townhouse kitchen I was never supposed to know about. And I keep asking myself the same thing. Was I wrong for sending Brian the screenshots and blowing up Olivia's relationship too? Or was I just the first person in that whole mess who finally stopped protecting the lie?